broadcast. The regularly scheduled Board of Estimation and Taxation will now begin.
Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation for September 21st, 2021. I am David Wheeler, President of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. As we begin, I will note for the record that this meeting has remote participation by members as authorized under the Minnesota Statutes Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and open to subject to open meeting laws. At this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Board Member Fry.
Here.
Board Member French.
Here.
Board Member Bender.
Here.
Board Member Fletcher.
Here.
Vice President Becker.
Here and unmuted.
President Wheeler.
Here.
There are 6 members present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum. We will now proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access at the city's Legislative Information Management System, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. Board members, the agenda for today's meeting is before us. May I please have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. No, there hasn't been a second. We need a second, please.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Seeing none, I ask the clerk to call a roll on the motion, please.
Board Member Fry.
Aye.
Board Member French.
Aye.
Board Member Bender.
Aye.
Board Member Fletcher.
Aye.
Vice President Becker.
Aye.
President Wheeler.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
The motion passes. The agenda is adopted. Next is the acceptance of the minutes from the August 25th meeting. May I please have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Seeing none, I ask the clerk call the roll on the motion, please.
Board Member Fry.
Aye.
Board Member French.
Aye.
Board Member Bender.
Aye.
Board Member Fletcher.
Aye.
Vice President Becker.
Aye.
President Wheeler.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
The motion passes. The minutes are accepted as presented. Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of assessment bonds in the amount of $65,125.76 for the 2021 alley renovation program. May I please have a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Just as a point of information, 2/3 vote is required to adopt this resolution. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I ask the clerk to call the roll on this motion.
Board Member Fry.
Aye.
Board Member French.
Aye.
Board Member Bender.
Aye.
Board Member Fletcher.
Aye.
Vice President Becker.
Aye.
President Wheeler.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
Okay. That motion passes and the resolution is adopted. And now there is on item 5 is a presentation on the mayor's 2022 budget. I will invite Amelia Kruber, Budget Director, to give the presentation.
Thank you so much. So today I'm going to give a brief sort of summary of the in-depth presentation that I gave last time I was before the board, just really to ground us in the mayor's recommended budget and accompanying property tax increase that will be before we kick off the public hearing today. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you so much. So the overall city budget is growing, the expenses side of it is growing by 7% into 2022. And in this view, what you're looking at is the actual spending for 19 and 20, the 2021 adopted budget, and the 2022 mayor's recommended budget. And in this view, you can really see the impact of the pandemic on the spending at the city. About halfway through 2020 is when measures to stop the spread of the coronavirus pandemic had large impacts to revenues at the city, and you can kind of see the dip in expenditures with us starting to pick back up towards normal in 2022. So if you go to the next slide, this shows the revenue side of the equation, again showing sort of the dip in revenues after the coronavirus pandemic has hit the U.S., contracting the economy nationally as well as in Minneapolis, and then our expected sort of moving towards normal in 2022 when you take a look at revenues across all funds. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So narrowing in and looking just at the general fund, which is where the largest part of the property tax levy, the general fund property tax levy, goes to support expenses in the mayor's 2022 budget are growing in the general fund. And this is driven by change items, new initiatives, as well as core service rebuilding, bringing back some of the people and programs that were cut in 2021 to manage the reduced revenues. You also see some increases in transfers. There are some one-time expenses in 2022 in the form of transfers that we don't expect to see in 2023. So that's the expenses side from a high level. If you go to the next slide, we'll talk about revenues briefly. So revenues, we see a similar story. In 2022, we are moving back towards normal. The one notable revenue source in the general fund in 2022 is that transfer section. So it's sort of a olive green color. And that is where we're showing use of American Rescue Act fund revenue, money to replace lost revenue and support core services provided by the city. And I'll talk a little bit more about our three-year plan in this budget to use those American Rescue Plan Act sources to bring back core services at the city while our revenues continue to rebound. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this shows all of the detail and a 5-year outlook of our overall levy at the city. In the mayor's recommended budget, we're increasing the levy by 5.45% overall, but some of those lines are increasing by more and some are increasing by less. Again, we're talking today a lot about the general fund, which is that top line, which is increasing by 6.1% this year. The outlook includes levy increases that all range between, I believe, 5.1 to 4.8 over the next 5 years. So go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit more about balancing the budget in the general fund. So this shows the expenditures and the revenues within the general fund and how a balanced budget is achieved in the mayor's recommended budget. I'll start first by talking a little bit about revenues. So you'll see the property tax general fund number, which matches what we saw in the slide previously, but also the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds. So this budget is using those funds, about $47 million in 2022, to replace lost revenue due to the coronavirus pandemic. And that is a important piece of the revenue side that will bring us up to the total expenditure side in that top part of the table, where we have our current service level budget, we're adding about $1.5 million in sort of that core service rebuilding. So this is working with departments that had to make cuts either to personnel or programs in 2020 and 21, bringing back their most prioritized spending items. And then $16 million in strategic investments. And some of those are ongoing and some of those are one-time. The largest one-time change item being the elections budget for 2022. And I'll make one other note on the revenue side is that our local government aid, because of a bill passed by the state legislature, is unchanged from last year. So there was a hold harmless bill passed eventually by the state legislature that kept us at 68.8 million and did add back about $600,000 to our revenue streams. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So I mentioned using American Rescue Plan Act dollars in the budget. Those are federal funds that are one-time only. We have the full 271 million, but we can only spend through 2024. And so when we're using one-time dollars to support ongoing spending, it's really critical that we take a long view, look at what our revenues are expected to do in 2025 and 2026 to ensure that the spending and the programs and the people that we are adding this year using that one-time support from the federal government are sustainable under our own resources once we get to 2025. And so this graph really shows the analysis that we did this year to make sure that we are spending ARPA dollars first within the required uses of the federal legislation, and secondly, in a way that's sustainable and smart for the city of Minneapolis, where we aren't putting ourselves in a place where we need to either cut programs again in 2025 or increase property taxes in a way that's sort of above the norm. So in this chart, you'll see the green bars are the either property taxes or other general fund revenues. And that's assuming, like I said, an increase to the general fund portion between 6.1 and 5.5 in each year, looking out into to 2027. The light blue area behind the bars shows our current service level spending. So all of the people and programs that council adopted in the 2021 budget pushed forward. The darker blue section are the additional spending that's ongoing and a little bit of one time that we're adding in the mayor's recommended 2022 budget. And then the purple and gold are showing how we are getting to that expenditure. And so you'll see the use of ARP in the next 3 years is filling that gap. And then in 2025, we expect that revenues will be back to a point where we can support the ongoing spending that we're adding in this recommended budget. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is a little bit more detailed look at that 3-year plan for American Rescue Plan Act revenue replacement. So in 2022, we're using that $47 million that we talked about when we're looking at the general fund balance. That is for 2022, in 2023, $37 million, and in 2024, $34 million. And then in 2025, when we're looking again at where our general fund revenues are and what the cost of our current service level will be in 2025. So you can see that the expenses are also inflated each year to make sure that that is not a surprise. We are not needing American Rescue Plan Act sources in 2025 while maintaining an overall property tax levy that has increases again between 5.45 and 4.86%. So this is really the 4-year outlook that shows us that using one-time money, we're doing it in a sustainable way in the mayor's recommended budget. Go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so that's the end of my summary of the mayor's recommended budget, the proposed levy, and the use of ARPA funds in the budget. We have an interactive budget book this year that allows you to explore and sort of zoom in and filter as you are looking at different departments and change items. So I would highly recommend going to that if you have additional questions or want to learn more. But that's the end of my presentation, and I'll hold for any questions.
Are there any questions? Yes, Ms. Becker.
I just want to just congratulate you on the amount of work that went into this. I worked at the Minneapolis Budget Office for 7 years, and then another 3 in the mayor's office, and know how much work went into this. I also want to congratulate the mayor. Given what is going on in our city and how messed up the economy has been, that this is around 5% is just like a phenomenal amount of work. Having been around other mayors, not to name any names, but who were at an 8% a year for several years, which was pretty painful. I think this is just really extraordinary, and I just want to just congratulate Mayor Fry on the amount of work and the thought that has gone into this. Both of you, as well as all the staff that put in a whole bunch of hours to make it happen. I think this is really phenomenal.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Well, Ms. Cooper, thank you. Excellent presentation. We were pretty scared a year ago, and it's really good to see that we're in really good hands now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will note that the Park and Recreation Board of Commissioners has submitted their official levy request adopted by Resolution 2021-252 on July 21st, 2021, requesting an estimated amount of $75,777,000, which reflects an increase of 7.75%. I will direct the clerk to receive and file that report by the budget director and the resolution submitted by the Park Board. On item 6 on the agenda is a scheduled public hearing to receive public comments on the property tax levies proposed in the mayor's 2022 recommended budget. Now, where are we in terms of, we were told early on there were no people that had signed up for speaking at the public hearing.
President Wheeler, one person has signed up, Jono Cowgill.
Okay, and that is since we started our meeting, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So I will now open the public hearing. We have one speaker signed up, and I will call on his name when it comes your turn to speak. Each speaker will have 2 minutes, and it will be 2 minutes. I've arranged to have a 5-second extra at the end. After 2 minutes, we'll give you a 5-second leeway, and your microphone will then be muted. When it is your turn to speak, please push number 6 to unmute and state your name for the record. We can. How do I do this? I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit silly here. Give me a little help.
You can call on your first one speaker who has signed up, Mr. Cowgill, to speak.
Yes, I don't see the name. I don't see where the name is, but I know Jono Cowgill. He is served on this Board of Estimate and Taxation, and you have the floor.
Thank you, President Wheeler. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'll be brief. I am calling here as the president of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board today for a twofold purpose. The first is to underline what has been received and filed by the Board of Estimate and Taxation today from the Park Board. It was a unanimous request of a 7.75% levy, and a portion of that funds the ongoing current service level of the board, and another portion of that realizes what I have mentioned to the board before, a historic refunding of youth services for the youth that really need it in our city. filling a gap that has been unfilled for a generation. I want to highlight that the park board is grateful for the mayor from his city perspective, putting together a budget that does include half of that requested levy amount, half of that additional youth levy amount in his budget, as well as some ARPA dollars. But I do want to highlight that should this Board of Estimate and Taxation so choose, now is the time to fully fund young people in the city and restore the funding that we lost in 2002, the last time we had the number of positive adult role models that we're again requesting in this levy. I just wanted to highlight again that the request is unanimous from the board. This is something that the board has been discussing and working towards for the last 4 years during its entire tenure. And at a time when our youth are in crisis in this city, when we have a public safety crisis, we know that positive adult role models and people being in our public spaces, caring for our young people, especially our most vulnerable young people, is a critical way for us to combat youth violence. So I urge the board to consider that. Again, thank the mayor for the funding that has been proposed in the budget. But if we did fully fund the 2.6 million through ongoing, it would represent a 0.39 increase in the overall levy request. Thank you for the time, and hope you all enjoy your meeting.
Thank you for joining us and for your words. Are there any others that have signed up to be part of the public hearing? Seeing no additional speakers, I will close the public hearing. At our next meeting on September 29th, the board will take action to fix the maximum certified tax levies for property taxes payable in 2022. That meeting will be held at our regular time beginning at 4 p.m. With that, we've concluded all the business that is to come before our board. Without objection, we stand adjourned.